Good evening, everyone, and may I wish a happy belated Easter to those of you who are watching. Apologies for not being able to be with you last night, but technology is what it is, and I'm still learning how to use all the different parts of it, so I hope you'll bear with me about that. Anyway, welcome to the Ecclesia. Well, what exactly is the Ecclesia? If you go back to the origins of the word in Old Greek, the ecclesia refers literally to people being called out of their homes in order to do something. And it was usually associated with making up one of the assemblies which would decide one of the things in a Greek city, in the polis, from which, of course, we get politics. Now, this, of course, if you know anything about how words get transformed, became used as the reference word for the church, or the community of people who believed in Jesus. And the words ecclesia, church, assembly, congregation, have been kind of interchangeable throughout history. I want to try and recover the idea of the ecclesia in terms of people being called out from their ordinary lives in order to do something. This is intended to be a progressive online community of faith. Online, of course, because it seems to be the only thing that we're able to do in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Being able to meet in person is very difficult. Also, I'm based in South Korea, so it would be very difficult for me to meet people in other countries except on the very rare occasion. And it's progressive because I want it to be a place where we look at matters of faith from a slightly different perspective from what you would expect in traditional religion. Now, before I get into that, you might be wondering, well, who's this guy? Well, I'll tell you something about myself. I'm a Canadian, originally from Corner Brook, Newfoundland and Labrador, and I've lived in Asia since 1997, working mainly in the area of English language teaching. I was born and raised in the United Church of Canada tradition, and at one time I was attempting to become ordained as a minister in that tradition, but that didn't work out. I became an Anglican shortly before I left for my first stint in South Korea in 1997, but I found that I was very uncomfortable with the traditional religious scene in South Korea, so I became what you might call a dun, a person who left organized religion and decided to not participate in it. I was a dun for 17 years, right up until Christmas 2013-14, when I heard a Christmas Eve sermon that got me thinking about it all over again. After that, I became part of a community known as Open Doors Metropolitan Community Church in Seoul, and I eventually helped with the leadership of that community. Eventually I was ordained in the two groups, the two church bodies with which it's affiliated. First with the Progressive Christian Alliance in 2015, and then with Metropolitan Community Churches in 2018. So, yeah, that's why I've got this on. So I thought I'd look clerical in some kind of way or other. I left Open Doors as its pastoral leader in August 2019 to take up an English teaching position in Vietnam. But through a number of circumstances, I find myself back here in South Korea again. So I've been wondering exactly what I should try to do with myself in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm looking at moving more into the realm of writing and journaling as a kind of career change. Since I'm beginning this thing in Easter, I suppose it would be appropriate to read one of the Easter stories. Besides, Christianity is I suppose I would say, like John Shelby Spong says, it is the window through which I walk into the divine. It's the tradition in which I was raised, and it is through that tradition that I encounter the divine. So, a little bit of Bible for you from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 28, first 10 verses. After the Sabbath, as the first day of the week was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And suddenly there was a great earthquake. For an angel of the Lord, descending from heaven, came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothing white as snow. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid. I know that you are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here, for he has been raised, as he said. Come, see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he has been raised from the dead. And indeed, he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. This is my message for you." So they left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly, Jesus met them and said, "Greetings." And they came to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." At this time, I'm just going to share a reflection with you. And if I were to give this a title, I would probably call it An Easter Proclamation for the 21st Century. Those of you who are well known with the Christian tradition know that the Easter Proclamation is basically Christ is risen. It's part of a dialogue proclamation between priest or minister and people in most Christian services. The minister says, "Hallelujah, Christ is risen," and the people respond, "Christ is risen indeed, hallelujah." Well, what does that mean in our time? One of the traditional outlooks on the resurrection held by many people in many churches to this very day, in fact some of you may hold it, is that the Bible should be treated as an historically accurate record of God's dealings with Israel and then with the Christian church in the coming of Jesus and in the work of the apostles, especially Paul, and that the resurrection basically means that a corpse, namely the corpse of a person named Jesus of Nazareth, was resuscitated by some kind of miraculous power which is beyond nature, and that this resuscitated corpse got up, left its grave, and as a human being was able to go around and speak to other people, and then somehow was swept up into the sky and to some other place in the universe beyond where this earth is. Well, let me say something which some of you may disagree with quite profoundly. I'm not sure that we can make that proclamation as some kind of historical fact. I do not think that we can make the proclamation Christ is risen and make a claim that it is somehow about a corpse being resuscitated. The simple fact is we lack evidence. And I'm talking about evidence in the way that we talk about evidence in the 21st century, where you have either some kind of documentation or some kind of scientific proof which shows that this could happen and that this indeed did happen to a Mediterranean Jewish peasant who was executed by the state for being an enemy of the state, for sedition basically, and that somehow this is some kind of historical fact. We don't have the evidence, and that is the simple truth of the matter. Well, many of you might be asking, well, if we don't have that, if we can't count on this as some kind of rock-solid witness, which is absolutely true, then what do we base the Christian faith on? Is it all just a bunch of fairy tales? Is it all just a bunch of wishful thinking? Is it some kind of story dreamed up by a bunch of people in Palestine? There are people who are more than willing to put forward that idea, the idea of the Christ myth and its relationship to various Egyptian or Sumerian stories or whatever. I'm not quite convinced of that. I do accept the idea that there was an historical person named Jesus of Nazareth who had some kind of effect on a group of people in Palestine, occupied Palestine during Roman times. What I would say is that the proclamation of Easter faith that I think we can make in the 21st century, and we'll have lots and lots of time to unpack this, is that it is more importantly the way of Jesus. The example, the ministry which he did, as faithfully as we can discern it from the text that we have, which is the kernel of our Easter proclamation, because a body can be killed, but a way of life, an example, well, that stays alive and that can't be killed. And so it seems to me that that is the basis of a believable, a credible Christian proclamation in the 21st century. And I would say that we need to think about making proclamations which can make sense to people. Because, let's face it, we are in a secular age. We are in a time where most religions and most religious ideas are sometimes treated as being guilty until proven innocent. And I don't have it all thought out about how this will work. I don't come to you with answers. I simply come with possibilities, with suggestions. The idea that perhaps what we do is probably more important than what we say we believe or what we're trying to convince people of. But I think following an example can be something which, in essence, will be more sustainable. We will probably need to be more open and more humble about encountering the truths that come from other religions, other spiritual traditions, from the secular world, from poetry, from literature, and less dependent on doctrinal statements or various kinds of law-based formulae which have been developed over the years. And again, it goes back to the idea of not depending so much on a religion about Jesus as in following a way which Jesus began. So that's what I hope to do here. Many of you might find that this is not what you're looking for, that either you need something else which gives you more certain answers, or you may already have a spiritual practice which gives you all the answers you need. If you need to keep seeking and this is not the place for it, okay, that's cool. Keep seeking. If you already have a system that you can place your trust in and which works for you, that's okay. Continue with that system. But if you're interested in doing some exploration and doing some journeying about what it means to be a person of faith in our age, then I invite you back from time to time. And I hope you'll become part of this online community. Maybe we'll discover some things together. You can find the Ecclesia on YouTube. I have my own YouTube channel for this. And you'll also find it on Twitter. I also hope that this will be something that will be part of a larger group of pages on a master website called myhugh.com. I'm still trying to negotiate how to work with Google Sites, but as soon as that's up and running, I'll certainly let you know. But in the meantime, you'll definitely find me on YouTube and on Twitter. So, again, if you find that this is something that sounds interesting and you'd like to be part of it, come join the journey. Come be part of the Ecclesia. Blessings and happy Easter.